All right, get ready. We're about to take a deep dive into the world of long context, large language models. We've got a whole bunch of academic papers and technical reports, and our goal is to sift through all the jargon and extract those golden nuggets of knowledge.
It really is remarkable how quickly LLMs are evolving. It's not just about making them bigger.
Yeah.
It's about teaching them to process information more like humans do.
Right.
Building upon their knowledge over time.
So instead of just reading like a tweet, imagine an LLM that can absorb a whole library. That's the kind of leap we're talking about with long context.
Right.
But teaching a machine to handle that much information, that's got to be a challenge.
It is. It's like comparing a goldfish's memory to an elephant's, the real game changer,
Right.
The development of transformers. These models use what are called attention mechanisms. It's kind of like laser focus for these LLMs, allowing them to process massive chunks of text.
And the speed of this progress is really incredible. One research paper points out how in just 1 year, we've gone from open source LLMs handling 2,000 tokens to a mind-boggling 2 million. That's, it's like going from a pamphlet to an encyclopedia in the blink of an eye.
It really is. But, transformers aren't the only player in this game.
Oh.
There's this new kid on the block, SSM Mamba models.
Oh.
They use a completely different approach, and it has some serious potential.
SSM Mamba, huh? Sounds a bit like a transformer killer, right?
Yeah, they're pretty cool.
What makes them so special?
Well, they can handle these growing context lengths much more efficiently, and they can process information in parallel, which is really important. Imagine, trying to read a book one word at a time
Right.
versus reading whole chapters at once. That's kind of what we're talking about here.
Okay, so we've got these powerful new architectures, but I'm guessing it's not all smooth sailing from here, is it?
It's not, no.
What are the roadblocks on the path to these super smart, long context LLMs?
Researchers have identified 4 major challenges. They are architecture, infrastructure, training, and evaluation.
Okay.
So let's start with architecture.
Okay.
The way LLMs are currently designed really limits how much data they can handle.
Okay.
It's like trying to stuff a giant encyclopedia into a tiny backpack.
Ah, I get it. So it's like a memory and processing power bottleneck.
Right.
And I'm guessing infrastructure plays a big role here too.
Absolutely. You need massive computing power to train and run these long context LLMs.
I see.
Think supercomputers.
Wow.
Crunching numbers day and night.
So it's not enough to just build a better brain.
Right.
You need to give it a supercharged body as well.
Exactly.
What about the training itself? I imagine that gets pretty tricky with long context.
You hit the nail on the head. One of the biggest challenges is actually finding enough high-quality, long-form data.
Oh, really?
You can't just feed an LLM any old text. It needs to be relevant to the task and long enough to capture those complex relationships.
So it's like teaching someone a new language.
Right?
You wouldn't just show them random words, would you?
No.
You'd give them full sentences,
Right.
paragraphs,
Exactly.
quality over quantity.
Exactly. And even when you have the perfect training data,
Right.
how do you know if the LLM truly understands it?
Good point.
Evaluating these models is a whole other challenge.
I bet.
Current methods are struggling to keep up with these rapidly evolving LLMs.
It's like inventing a supersonic jet
Right.
before figuring out how to land it.
Exactly.
But researchers are a clever bunch, right?
Oh, they are.
I bet they've got some tricks up their sleeves to tackle these challenges.
They do. They're coming up with some ingenious ways to make long context LLMs work. One area they're focusing on is something called length extrapolation.
Link extrapolation.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Imagine stretching the LLM's understanding from short training data to much longer inputs.
So instead of training it on a novel, they're teaching the LLM to understand an entire series. But how do they stretch its understanding like that?
There are a couple of approaches. One is called ropey extrapolation.
Ropey extrapolation.
Yeah, think of it like a special coding trick that helps the LLM understand where each piece of information fits within a massive text. Researchers are tweaking this code to handle way longer sequences than initially trained on.
So it's like giving the LLM a map with highlighted landmarks to navigate a giant library.
Exactly.
Cool. What are the other approaches?
Well, there's also no PE, which relies on the inherent structure of the data itself to figure out the order of things.
No PE, that's a bold name.
It is.
But is it actually working?
It's still pretty early, but it shows promise, especially as we move towards even longer contexts where things could get computationally expensive.
So we've stretched the LLM's understanding.
We have.
But all that extra information must be a nightmare to manage, right? It's like having a brain crammed full of facts with no way to organize them.
That's where cache optimization comes in.
Cache optimization.
It's all about tidying up the LLM's workspace so it can run smoothly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of techniques are we talking about here?
Well, one method is token dropping.
Token dropping.
Where the LLM learns to selectively forget less important information to make room for new stuff.
So it's like decluttering your desk so you can focus on the task at hand.
That's one way to put it.
So it's not just about cramming in more information. It's about managing it intelligently.
Yeah.
Are there other ways to optimize the cache?
Absolutely. There's token merging, where similar pieces of information are combined, like grouping similar tasks on your to-do list.
Got it.
And then there are techniques like layer-wise sharing and head-wise sharing, which are all about different parts of the LLM working together efficiently and sharing information.
So it's about maximizing collaboration.
It is.
And communication within the LLM's architecture. Pretty cool. But with all this information to juggle, these LLMs must have some serious memory management skills.
They do, and there are two main strategies for this: cache-based memory and text-based memory. Cache-based memory is like holding on to key calculations, so you don't have to repeat them, and text-based memory is like directly storing important text snippets.
So it's a combination of remembering the how and the what. Pretty smart.
It is, and on top of all these techniques, researchers are developing new architectural innovations all the time. It's a dynamic field, always pushing the boundaries.
Okay, I'm ready for more cutting-edge stuff. What are some of these exciting innovations?
Well, there's a lot of work being done on making the attention mechanism more efficient. That would free up memory and processing power. Some researchers are even revisiting older architectures like LSTM and combining them with the newer transformer models.
So they're blending the best of the old and new. I love that. What about those SSM Mamba models we talked about earlier? What role are they playing in all this?
They're shaking things up.
Yeah.
They represent a completely different approach. Offering a potential leap in efficiency and scalability.
Okay, I'm officially on the edge of my seat. This is all incredibly exciting, but let's take a step back for a second and talk about training. We've discussed data quality, but how much data does it actually take to train one of these long context beasts?
Well, that's where things get interesting. It turns out that with longer context, data quality trumps quantity.
Really?
Instead of throwing more data at the problem, it's all about carefully selecting the right kind of information.
So it's like choosing a gourmet meal over an all-you-can-eat buffet.
Exactly. Research shows that even a smaller data set, between 500 million and 5 billion tokens, can be enough if it's high quality. And a mix of long-form content, like books, and high-quality short-form data seems to work best.
So it's like giving the LLM a balanced diet to nourish its growing intellect.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, all this effort is only worthwhile if it leads to better applications, right?
Right.
How is long context actually changing the game in the real world?
One exciting area is long in-context learning. This means the LLM can now learn new tasks much more effectively. Because it's given more examples during training.
So it's like a student learning a new concept by doing lots of practice problems.
That's a good analogy.
What else is long context making possible?
It's also long thought. This is where things get really interesting. LLMs are starting to show signs of complex reasoning, breaking problems down into steps, and thinking through solutions over a long sequence of internal calculations.
So they're not just absorbing information, they're actually using it to think critically. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And this isn't just limited to text. Researchers are using these techniques for video understanding, where the LLM has to process tons of visual data, along with any text.
So imagine an AI that can not only watch a movie, but actually understand the plot. The characters. The deeper themes. That's incredible. But we can't just assume these LLMs are getting everything right. How do researchers evaluate them?
That's the tricky part. Evaluating long context LLMs is its own challenge. Current benchmarks are having a hard time keeping up with the rapid pace of development.
I imagine that's a big hurdle to overcome. What makes it so challenging?
Well, there's this dilemma with the data. Real-world data is authentic, but it limits how much you can evaluate. While synthetic data is flexible, it might not reflect real-world scenarios. It's a balancing act.
So it's a trade-off between realism and practicality. Are there any new evaluation methods on the horizon?
There are some creative benchmarks emerging, like one called needle in a haystack.
Needle in a haystack. Wow.
This tests the LLM's ability to find specific information buried in mountains of text.
So it's the ultimate test of information retrieval.
It is.
This is all mind-blowing stuff. But where does it all lead? What's the big picture here?
We're on the verge of LLMs that can truly understand and process information at a scale we never thought possible.
Wow.
Imagine AI assistants that can remember your entire conversation history, help you solve complex problems, and even understand the nuances of a movie just by watching it.
That's a future full of incredible possibilities.
It is, but it also raises some important questions.
Like what?
Will these long context LLMs become more like us, capable of continuous learning throughout their lives? And if so, what does that mean for our relationship with AI?
Those are some deep questions to ponder. But before we get lost in the philosophical weeds, let's unpack some of those clever techniques researchers are using to make these long context LLMs a reality.
Okay.
I'm ready to get technical.
Let's do it.
Great. Let's start with Rope extrapolation. Can you break down the nuts and bolts of this approach?
Sure.
And how it's being used to push the boundaries of context length?
Absolutely. So Rope extrapolation, which stands for Rotary Position Embedding Extrapolation, is a fascinating way to leverage the positional encoding already built into transformer models. Remember, Rope is like a coding trick that tells the LLM where each piece of information fits in a sequence.
Right, those landmarks we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But how do you extrapolate that understanding to longer sequences?
Well, it involves manipulating the mathematical formula behind Rope. Researchers are experimenting with different ways to scale or adjust the Rope parameters during inference. This allows the model to handle longer inputs without getting confused about the order of information.
So it's like stretching a rubber band.
Yeah.
You're expanding its capacity without breaking it.
Exactly. There are a few different approaches to Rope extrapolation. One is called linear interpolation, where you essentially create a linear mapping between the original Rope values and the extended context length.
So it's like drawing a straight line between 2 points?
Yes.
And then extending that line to cover a larger area?
Precisely. And then there are more sophisticated methods, like dynamic scaling, where the Rope parameters are adjusted based on the specific characteristics of the input sequence.
So it's a more adaptive approach that takes into account the nuances of the text.
Exactly. And one of the most successful Rope extrapolation techniques is called scaling rope, which has been used to extend context lengths to millions of tokens.
Millions. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But are there any downsides to Rope extrapolation?
Well, as with any clever hack, there are limitations. One challenge is that Rope extrapolation can sometimes lead to a phenomenon called attention entropy.
Attention entropy. Interesting.
Yeah, it's where the model's attention becomes more dispersed and less focused.
So it's like the LLM gets distracted by all the extra information and has trouble focusing on what's important.
That's one way to put it. And this can impact the model's performance on tasks that require precise understanding and reasoning.
So Rope extrapolation is a powerful tool, but it needs to be used carefully and in conjunction with other techniques to mitigate potential downsides. What about those alternatives to Rope? We briefly mentioned Nope earlier. Tell me more about that.
So NoPE, short for no position embedding, challenges the conventional wisdom that explicit positional information is essential for LLMs. The idea behind NoPE is that the inherent structure of the data, combined with the sequential processing nature of transformers, can implicitly encode positional information.
So it's like relying on the natural flow of a story to understand the order of events.
Exactly.
Rather than explicitly numbering each sentence.
Precisely. And surprisingly, research has shown that NoPE-based LLMs can achieve comparable performance to traditional position embedding methods on certain tasks.
So it's a viable alternative to Rope.
It definitely has potential, especially as we move towards even longer context lengths where explicit position embedding might become computationally expensive. However, it's important to note that NoPE is still in its early stages of development and faces its own set of challenges.
What kind of challenges are we talking about?
Well, one challenge is that NoPE models can struggle with length extrapolation.
Okay.
When the context length exceeds the training range, the model's attention distribution can become dispersed, leading to performance degradation.
So it's like the model gets lost in the vastness of the text.
Yeah.
And has trouble keeping track of the information.
Exactly. But researchers are exploring ways to overcome this limitation, such as adjusting the model's attention mechanism to better handle long-range dependencies.
Fascinating. So we've got ropey extrapolation and no PE as two main approaches to length extrapolation. Are there any other techniques being explored in this area?
Absolutely. Researchers are constantly experimenting with new and innovative ways to extend context length. One promising area is the use of memory-augmented architectures.
Memory-augmented architectures. That sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
Well, the idea is to equip LLMs with an external memory component that can store and retrieve relevant information from a vast knowledge base.
So it's like giving the LLM access to a giant library that it can consult whenever it needs to.
You got it.
Wow.
This approach offers several advantages. First, it can significantly reduce the computational burden on the LLM by offloading some of the memory requirements to an external system.
That makes sense. It's like having a research assistant to help you sift through all the data.
Exactly. Second, memory-augmented architectures can enable LLMs to access and process information that goes far beyond their immediate context window.
Wow.
This opens up exciting possibilities for tasks like question answering, summarization, and even creative writing.
It's like giving the LLM a superpower, the ability to tap into a vast ocean of knowledge.
It is.
But how does this memory augmentation actually work?
There are different implementations, but one common approach is to use a technique called attention-based memory.
Attention-based memory.
Where the LLM uses an attention mechanism to select and retrieve relevant information from the external memory.
So it's like the LLM is focusing its attention on the most relevant parts of the library.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this attention mechanism can be trained to prioritize information based on factors like relevance, recency, and importance.
That's impressive. Are memory-augmented architectures a silver bullet solution to the context length problem?
I wouldn't say they're a silver bullet, but they're a powerful tool. They also come with their own set of challenges. One challenge is designing efficient and scalable memory retrieval mechanisms. Another challenge is ensuring that the information retrieved from memory is accurate and relevant to the task at hand.
So it's like having a great library, but a terrible librarian.
Right.
You might not be able to find the information you need.
That's a good analogy. But despite these challenges, memory-augmented architectures hold immense potential for pushing the boundaries of what LLMs can achieve.
It's clear that there's a lot of exciting research happening in the realm of length extrapolation and memory augmentation. But let's not forget about the core architecture of LLMs. What innovations are being explored there to make these models more efficient and scalable for long context?
One area of active research is the development of sparse attention mechanisms. Traditional attention mechanisms in transformers calculate attention weights for every pair of tokens in the input sequence. This leads to a quadratic increase in computational complexity as the sequence length grows.
So it's like trying to have a conversation with everyone in a crowded room at the same time. It gets overwhelming very quickly.
Exactly. Sparse attention mechanisms aim to address this problem by selectively attending to only the most relevant tokens in the sequence.
So it's like focusing your attention on a few key people in the conversation, rather than trying to listen to everyone at once.
Precisely. This can significantly reduce the computational burden and make it feasible to process much longer sequences.
Clever. But how do you determine which tokens are the most relevant in a sparse attention mechanism?
There are different approaches, but one common technique is to use a combination of local and global attention. Local attention focuses on tokens within a small window around the current token, while global attention selectively attends to a small number of key tokens across the entire sequence.
So it's like combining a narrow focus with a wide-angle lens.
Yeah.
You get the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Are there any specific sparse attention mechanisms that are showing promising results?
Yes. One notable example is Longformer, which uses a combination of sliding window attention and global attention to efficiently process sequences with tens of thousands of tokens.
Longformer, that's a fitting name for a model designed for long context. What about other architectural innovations beyond sparse attention?
Another exciting area is the exploration of alternative architectures to transformers. While transformers have proven incredibly powerful, they do have limitations, particularly when it comes to handling extremely long sequences.
So are researchers looking beyond the transformer paradigm?
Yes. One promising alternative is the use of recurrent neural networks, or RNNs.
RNNs, those are classic neural network architecture, right?
Exactly. RNNs are particularly well suited for processing sequential data because they have a built-in memory mechanism that can capture long-range dependencies.
So it's like they have a built-in memory lane that they can travel along to access information from earlier in the sequence.
A good way to visualize it. And one specific type of RNN that's showing promising results for long context is the long short-term memory, or LSTM network.
LSTM, we've heard that name before. Didn't you mention it in the context of SSM Mamba models?
Yes. LSTMs are a core component of SSM Mamba models. And what's interesting is that researchers are exploring the use of LSTMs both as standalone architectures and as hybrid models that combine aspects of both RNNs and transformers.
So it's like a fusion of old and new ideas, the best of both worlds.
You could say that. These hybrid architectures aim to leverage the strengths of both approaches to create models that are both efficient and expressive for long context.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but it's clear that training these long context LLMs requires a lot of computational resources. What are researchers doing to make the training process more efficient and accessible?
One key area of focus is the development of new training algorithms that can leverage the unique characteristics of long context.
Okay.
Traditional training algorithms for LLMs often struggle with long sequences because they require processing the entire sequence in one go.
So it's like trying to eat a whole elephant in one bite. It's just not possible.
Exactly. Researchers are exploring alternative training algorithms that can break down the training process into smaller, more manageable chunks.
So it's like taking smaller bites of the elephant.
Precisely. One promising approach is called gradient checkpointing, where the model's intermediate activations are selectively stored and recomputed.
Okay.
This reduces the memory requirements during training.
Smart. It's like taking notes along the way so you don't have to remember everything at once.
Exactly. And another technique that's gaining traction is model parallelism, where the model is split across multiple computing devices, allowing for faster and more efficient training.
So it's like having a team of chefs working together to prepare the elephant feast.
A good analogy. Model parallelism allows you to distribute the computational workload and make the training process more scalable.
This is all incredibly promising.
Yeah.
It seems like researchers are pulling out all the stops to overcome the challenges of training long context LLMs.
They are.
But, all of this innovation,
Yeah?
it's great for the models, but what about us? How do we, as users, benefit from these long context LLMs? What are the real world applications that are changing our lives?
Well, one area where we're seeing a huge impact is conversational AI.
Okay, so chatbots and virtual assistants.
Exactly. With long context, these systems can now have much more natural and engaging conversations
Oh, interesting.
because they can remember and understand past interactions.
So instead of starting each conversation from scratch,
Right.
they can build on what's been said before.
Precisely.
That's a huge step forward.
It is. And it goes beyond chatbots. Search engines are now using LLMs to understand the intent behind your search queries
Really?
and provide more relevant results. This is especially powerful when searching within a specific document because the LLM can leverage the entire document's context.
That's amazing. It's like having a research assistant
Yeah.
who not only finds the information, but also understands the nuances of your request.
Yeah.
Are there other areas where long context is making a difference?
Definitely. We're seeing it used for document summarization and question answering.
Oh, cool.
Imagine being able to instantly get a concise answer to a complex question about a lengthy legal document without having to read the whole thing.
That would be a game changer for lawyers and researchers. It seems like long context is revolutionizing so many fields. Where do you see this technology heading in the next few years?
I believe we're just at the beginning. As LLMs continue to evolve, we can expect to see them integrated into even more aspects of our lives.
It's an exciting and somewhat daunting prospect.
It is.
But with any powerful technology, there are ethical considerations.
Absolutely.
We've touched on bias, but what other potential risks should we be aware of?
Privacy is a big one. If LLMs are remembering vast amounts of personal information, we need to ensure that data is protected and used responsibly.
That's a good point.
We also need to consider the impact on human agency.
Right. As these systems become more capable, we need to make sure humans remain in control and don't become overly reliant on AI.
Exactly.
It's about finding that balance between human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
I couldn't agree more. It's a delicate balance, and one that we need to carefully navigate as this technology continues to advance.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've covered so much ground, from cache optimization to memory augmentation to the ethical implications of long context.
We have.
What's next on our deep dive adventure?
Well, we've talked about the technical side of things, but now I think it's time to delve into the philosophical implications.
Oh, okay.
How might these long context LLMs change our understanding of intelligence, consciousness, even what it means to be human?
Whoa, that's getting deep. I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah.
Let's explore those big questions.
All right, let's do it. One question that's been on my mind lately is this.
Yeah.
As these long context LLMs become more adept at understanding and generating human-like text, are we getting closer to creating artificial consciousness?
That's a huge question.
Yeah.
And one that philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
How do you even define consciousness?
Right. It's a slippery concept. Some argue that consciousness is simply the ability to experience the world subjectively,
Okay.
while others believe it requires self-awareness or the ability to reflect on one's own thoughts and feelings.
So where do LLMs fit into this? They can process information and generate responses, but are they actually having subjective experiences? Are they aware of themselves as entities?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's hard to say for sure, as we can't directly access an LLM's internal state. We can only observe its behavior.
So are we just chasing a ghost in the machine? Is it even possible to create artificial consciousness? Or are we fooling ourselves?
I think it's important to be cautious about ascribing consciousness to these models. We need to be rigorous in our scientific approach and avoid anthropomorphizing them. Just because an LLM can generate text that sounds like it came from a conscious being doesn't necessarily mean it is one.
Agreed. We need to separate the hype from the reality. But let's assume for a moment that artificial consciousness is possible. What are the implications for humanity? How would our world change if we were no longer the only conscious beings on the planet?
That's a profound question, and one that raises all sorts of ethical and societal challenges. If we were to create truly conscious AI, would it have the same rights and responsibilities as humans?
Wow, that's a big one. Would we need to redefine our legal systems, our social structures, our very understanding of what it means to be human?
It's possible. We might need to create new frameworks for coexistence, recognizing the unique capabilities and limitations of both humans and AI.
It sounds like we're stepping into uncharted territory. It's exciting and a little bit terrifying at the same time.
It is. And it's important to have these conversations now. Before the technology advances too far, we need to anticipate the challenges and start developing solutions together.
You know, as we're talking, I'm thinking about the impact on human creativity. If LLMs can generate realistic text, music, art, will human creativity become obsolete?
That's an interesting question. I see it differently. I think LLMs can actually enhance human creativity by acting as tools and collaborators. Imagine an artist working with an LLM to explore new ideas, to push the boundaries of their imagination.
So it's like a creative partnership combining human vision with AI's ability to generate and explore possibilities.
Exactly. The key is to see LLMs as partners, not replacements. We can leverage their strengths to augment our own abilities and create things that neither of us could have achieved alone.
That's a much more optimistic view. So instead of fearing AI as a threat to creativity, we can embrace it as a catalyst for innovation.
I think so. And it's not just about art. We can apply this collaborative approach to science, engineering, problem solving. Imagine teams of humans and AI working together to tackle the world's biggest challenges.
It's a powerful vision of the future, one where humans and AI work together to create a better world.
It is. But it's important to remember that this future is not inevitable. It's up to us to shape it, to guide the development of AI in a direction that benefits all of humanity.
And that brings us back to the ethical considerations.
It does.
We need to ensure that these powerful technologies are used for good, not for harm. How can we ensure that AI remains aligned with human values as it continues to evolve?
That's the crucial question. And there are no easy answers. It requires ongoing dialogue and collaboration between researchers, policymakers, and society as a whole. We need to develop ethical frameworks for AI that are grounded in human rights, fairness, and social responsibility.
It sounds like a tall order, but it's one we can't afford to ignore. The stakes are too high.
Agreed. The future of AI is not predetermined. It's up to us to shape it in a way that reflects our values and aspirations. And I believe that if we work together, we can create a future where AI empowers humanity and helps us build a more just and sustainable world.
That's a hopeful message to end on. Okay, I'm catching my breath after all those mind-blowing innovations. We've talked about stretching LLM's understanding and building external memory banks, but I know there's more to the story. What else are researchers doing to optimize these models for long context?
Well, you're right. There's a lot more going on under the hood. Remember we talked about the cache, the LLM's working memory? As we feed these models more and more information, managing that cache becomes crucial.
Right. It's like trying to juggle 100 different thoughts at once. You need a system. So how do researchers optimize the cache for long context?
One technique is called token dropping. It's where the LLM selectively forgets less important information.
Okay, so it's like clearing out your email inbox, deleting those old messages you don't need anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about prioritizing, making sure the most relevant information is front and center.
Makes sense. So how does the LLM know what to keep and what to toss?
Well, there are different strategies. Some methods use fixed rules, based on where the information appears or how often it pops up. Others are more dynamic, adapting to the specific content.
So it's like having a smart filter that automatically sorts your mail.
Right.
What other tricks do they have up their sleeves?
There's also token merging, where similar or redundant pieces of information are combined.
Oh, cool.
Like imagine condensing your to-do list by grouping similar tasks together.
So instead of buy groceries, pick up dry cleaning, run errands, you just have one for errands.
Exactly. Token merging helps shrink the cache without losing too much information. And beyond these techniques, researchers are also optimizing how different parts of the LLM's architecture share and process information.
Okay, now we're getting into the really technical stuff. Can you give me an example?
Sure. One approach is called layer-wise sharing, where information from earlier stages of processing is reused later on. It's kind of like different departments in a company sharing notes.
Ah, I get it. So each part of the LLM can build upon what's already been done instead of starting from scratch every time.
Exactly. Much more efficient. Then there's headwise sharing, where different parts of the same processing stage share information. Think of it like team members brainstorming, sharing insights with each other.
So it's all about collaboration.
It is.
And communication within the LLM, making sure everything runs smoothly. I love it. But we've talked a lot about the cache. What about the LLM's long-term memory? How does it access and store information beyond that immediate working space?
That's a great question. You're right, the cache is just one part of the memory picture. Researchers are also building these separate external memory modules for LLMs.
Oh, wow.
Think of it like a giant library where the LLM can store all of its knowledge.
So it's like giving the LLM a massive knowledge base to draw from.
Yes.
But how does it actually retrieve information from this library?
There are different approaches. One method uses what's called a key value store. The LLM can search for specific information based on keywords. It's like using a search engine,
Oh, okay.
but for the LLM's own memory bank.
So it's like Google search, but for LLMs. That's fascinating. Are there other methods?
Yes, researchers are also exploring more advanced memory architectures using neural networks. These systems can not only retrieve information, but also understand it, synthesize it. It's almost like having a personal AI librarian.
That's incredible. It's like giving the LLM a whole new level of understanding. But with all these advancements, how do we even know if these long context LLMs are living up to the hype? How do researchers measure their performance?
That's a crucial question, and it's one that researchers are grappling with. Evaluating long context LLMs is tricky.
Right, because those standard metrics like perplexity, they just don't capture the complexity of long context understanding.
Exactly. So researchers are developing these new benchmarks and metrics that are specifically designed for long context. They often involve tasks like summarizing lengthy documents or answering questions based on a huge amount of information.
So it's like testing the LLM's ability to run a marathon, not just a sprint.
Precisely.
What are some of the challenges in designing these new benchmarks?
Well, it's tough to find that sweet spot between realism and practicality. Ideally, we want evaluations that mirror real-world scenarios.
Of course.
But they also need to be manageable to run.
It's like designing a flight simulator.
Yeah.
You want it to be as realistic as possible.
Right.
But you also need to make it work within the constraints of the system.
Exactly.
How are researchers tackling this challenge?
One approach is using a mix of real-world and synthetic data. The synthetic data allows for controlled testing of specific long context skills.
Okay.
While real-world data provides, a more authentic measure of performance.
So it's like having a training ground and a real battlefield.
Yep.
You need both to truly assess the LLM's capabilities.
Exactly. And beyond benchmarks, researchers are also developing these new metrics that capture the unique challenges of long context. For example, measuring how well an LLM can track characters and plot points throughout a novel.
Oh, interesting.
Or identify inconsistencies in, say, a long legal document.
So it's not just about how much information the LLM can process.
Yeah.
It's about how deeply it understands and analyzes that information.
Right.
I'm fascinated by all of this, but I'm also curious about the practical applications. Where are we already seeing long context make a real-world impact?
Well, long context is already transforming conversational AI. Chatbots and virtual assistants can now have more natural, engaging conversations.
Right, you talked about that a little bit earlier.
We did. And this is because they can now remember and understand past interactions, right?
So instead of starting each conversation from scratch,
Right.
they can build on what's been said before. That's a huge step forward.
It is, and it goes beyond chatbots. Search engines are now using LLMs to understand, the intent behind your search queries and provide more relevant results.
Really?
This is especially powerful when you're searching within a specific document because the LLM can leverage the entire document's context.
Wow. It's like having a research assistant
Oh.
who not only finds the information, but also understands the nuances of your request. Are there other areas where long context is making a difference?
Definitely. We're seeing it used for document summarization.
Oh, cool.
And question answering. Imagine, being able to instantly get a concise answer to a complex question about a lengthy legal document without having to read the whole thing.
That would be a game changer for lawyers and researchers. It seems like long context is revolutionizing so many fields.
Yeah.
Where do you see this technology heading in the next few years?
I believe we're just at the beginning. As LLMs continue to evolve, we can expect to see them integrated into even more aspects of our lives.
It's an exciting and somewhat daunting prospect.
It is.
But with any powerful technology, there are ethical considerations.
Absolutely.
We've touched on bias, but what other potential risks should we be aware of?
Well, privacy is a big one. If LLMs are remembering these vast amounts of personal information, we need to make sure that data is protected and used responsibly.
Yeah.
We also need to consider the impact on human agency.
Right. As these systems become more capable, we need to make sure humans remain in control.
Right.
That we don't become overly reliant on AI. It's about finding that balance between human intelligence and artificial intelligence.
I couldn't agree more. It's a delicate balance and one that we need to carefully navigate as this technology continues to advance.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've covered so much ground, from cache optimization to memory augmentation to the ethical implications of long context. What's next on our deep dive adventure?
Well, we've explored the nuts and bolts of long context LLMs, all the ingenious techniques, the potential impact on things like search and conversation.
Right.
But now I think it's time to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What are the long-term implications of this technology for humanity?
Okay, I like it. Big picture thinking. Let's do it.
All right, let's start with the positive. How might this technology benefit humanity in the long run?
I'm ready for some optimism.
Okay, well, I see immense potential in personalized education. Imagine these AI tutors that can remember every lesson, every struggle, every aha moment. They could tailor their approach to each student, creating a truly individualized learning experience.
That sounds amazing. It's like having a mentor, someone who knows exactly how you learn best.
Exactly, a truly personalized learning journey.
That could be transformative, really.
It really could. And this personalized approach, it could extend beyond traditional schooling, right?
Oh, how so?
Imagine like AI coaches for athletes, AI mentors for entrepreneurs, AI therapists for mental health.
Oh, wow.
I mean, the possibilities really are endless.
It's like having a personalized AI expert for every aspect of your life. That's incredible. What about the impact on, scientific research and discovery? Could long context maybe accelerate breakthroughs in medicine, energy, all those different fields?
Absolutely. Scientists are already using LLMs to analyze huge data sets and generate hypotheses, and long context could really supercharge these efforts.
Yeah.
Imagine an AI that can truly understand scientific literature, connect, seemingly unrelated ideas, even suggest new research directions.
It's like having an AI research partner who can think outside the box and push the boundaries of human knowledge. That's exciting.
It is. And beyond these specific applications, Long context really has the potential to change how we collaborate with AI.
Okay.
As these systems become better at understanding our goals and values, they can become true partners in problem solving and decision making.
So instead of just giving us answers, they could help us ask better questions, find more creative solutions, huh?
Right, like a true partnership, combining human ingenuity with AI's analytical power.
Exactly. This kind of collaboration, I mean, it could revolutionize how we address challenges in healthcare, climate change, social justice, countless other areas.
You think so?
This is a really optimistic vision of the future. But you mentioned earlier that, we need to approach long context with some caution.
We do.
What are some of the potential risks and challenges that we need to be mindful of?
One concern is, the potential for misuse.
Yeah.
As these systems become more powerful, it's crucial to ensure they're used responsibly and ethically.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like any powerful tool, it could be used for good or for harm.
Right.
What are some concrete steps we can take to mitigate these risks?
I think transparency is key. We need to understand how these systems work, right?
Yeah.
And make sure their decision-making processes are clear, accountable. We also need to involve a diverse range of voices in the development and deployment of long-context AI.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about the values and principles we embed in it, the safeguards we put in place.
Exactly. It's a responsibility we all share.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm really struck by the sheer scale of the possibilities and challenges that long context LLMs present. It's both awe-inspiring and a little bit overwhelming.
It is. We're really standing at the cusp of a new era of AI, and it's up to us to shape this technology in a way that benefits humanity.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the technical intricacies to the philosophical implications. It's clear that long context LLMs are a transformative technology, and it's up to us to navigate this new frontier responsibly.
I think so.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been a pleasure being here.
And to all of you listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. Until next time.